Hello everyone, welcome to Reviews, Views, and Everything Else. This will be part 2 on the GESARA NESARA law, which was signed in to law under Bill Clinton's time in office. I will go back and we will find, I will look through those archives and see if I can find if there's anything in the judicial sites about that law, but I'm going to continue reading this article found on wethepeople1787.com. I will post the link underneath this video if you want to go read it in complete detail yourself. So here we go. This is part 2. It says overnight on Monday, Tuesday the 25th, and the 26th of August, Monday and Tuesday, the 25th and 26th of August 2008, the 4,000 NESARA-related International Prosperity Fund trigger packages were returned to the vaults of the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. They had been in the possession of Interpol since they were confiscated from John Glover Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, under an international command order actioned on the 18th of August 2008. This procedure involved the World Court at The Hague, the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, and the law enforcement authorities of several sovereign nations. Roberts had threatened to burn the packages. Interpol, sometimes styled as Interpol, is the International Criminal Police Organization. The Prosperity Fund trigger packages were returned illegally to the U.S. Supreme Court on the orders of Interpol Secretary General Ronald Noble. He was taking unauthorized instructions from President George Bush Sr. and had been bribed to do so. Noble had been a Bush White House nomination for the post of Interpol Secretary General in 2000. Previously, he had been a Treasury official responsible for law reinforcement under Lloyd Bentsen and Robert Rubin during the first Bill Clinton presidency. When Ronald Noble's illegal activities came to light, a note was sent to each of the 186 member nations of Interpol. There was widespread fury at this news, and many nations demanded a radical restructuring of the organization. Ronald Noble and 12 of his co-conspirators at Interpol were arrested. There was a hasty attempt by elements at the International Criminal Court, World Court, and Interpol to assemble a public relations smokescreen following the Washington package theft debacle. On Wednesday, the 3rd of September 2008, Interpol website published a news item headed International Criminal Court. Prosecutors' visit to Interpol underlines collaboration between both organizations. The short text read that the prosecutor Lois Moreno Ocampo of the International Criminal Court, ICC, today met with Interpol Secretary General Ronald K. Noble to identify law enforcement tools to enhance cooperation between both organizations while fully respecting their respective mandates and areas of competence. In the international law enforcement and intelligence community in recent years, the view has developed that Interpol has become the first choice career for white-collar, corrupt police personnel worldwide. The de facto reality is that Interpol exists to provide information, destruction services, and logistical blind eye support for the mob, organized crime, and international gangsters across all continents. Interpol specializes in the covert support of financial crime, contract murders, drugs, running, and the sex trade. As Catherine Austin Fitts has pointed out, the supremacy of the central banking warfare investment model that has ruled our planet for the last 500 years depends on being able to combine the high margin profits of organized crime with the low cost of capital and liquidity that comes with governmental authority and popular faith in the rule of law. All that is asked by senior Interpol figures is a reliable series of large repeated non-attributable bribes from politicians and major criminals upon whom they have police information. For example, on the 12th of January 2008, the South African police prima donna Jackie Selebi was forced to resign as Interpol president. He had been discovered accepting bribes worth 1.2 million rand and acting in a manner which deliberately defeated the course of justice. Previous to becoming Interpol president in 2004, Selebi had been National Commissioner of the South African Police Service and South Africa's representative. And apparently there was a video posted here over some of the wording, and I cannot delete that, so I'm not sure what the rest of that paragraph said. It continues, Henry Paulson was shot by an assassin on Friday, 28th of December 2007 and died in the hospital on Wednesday, the 2nd of January 2008. This followed an argument with the Chinese authorities, with whom Paulson had stolen a sum of $4.5 trillion conveyed through the People's Bank of China in May of 2006. Since January 2008, the Bush White House has continued to pretend that the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Henry Paulson, is still alive. Why would they do that? We're going to have to investigate that. Let me see. Again, another video. And right here, there's a little bit that says how the Bush White House is engaging major banks to resist reforms in order to crash the American economy, because the Bush family, the Clinton, and this is regardless of political party, they are part of the global elite, which is trying to take down our government. All right, on Friday, August 2008, the 22nd, Lee Wanta wrote a letter to President George Bush offering to purchase Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae upon receipt of $4.5 trillion owing to him. This letter was carried on acceptance validity of 24 hours, was copied to the United Nations and to many other concerned recipients. The full text of Lee Wanta's letter was as follows. Special attention of the Honorable George W. Bush, Jr., contingent on my economic receipt of U.S. dollars of $4.5 trillion, I, Ambassador Lee E. Wanta, offer the following proposal for your timely acceptance and facilitation involving the total purchase of the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Complete purchase of both corporations' common stock at cap price. Complete purchase of both corporations' preferred stock at a cap price. Complete purchase of debt obligations of both corporations above the subordinated debt level, but below the senior secured to the extent permitted under the corporation's debt instruments. Pay upon my immediate economic receipt in U.S. dollar collection, personal custodial control, the U.S. Department of the Treasury civil personal repatriation income tax of U.S. dollars 1.575 trillion, increase the original U.S. dollars 1 trillion cash purchase of U.S. Treasury notes, and add an additional U.S. dollars 1.6 trillion, both at par value pursuant to my original London treaty at 85% cost. I am very ready. How about you to fully protect our great nation forthwith? On Monday, 11th of August 2008, John Grover Roberts, the 17th Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, was caught by U.S. security agents trying to gain unlawful access to the global prosperity funds due to the release in connection with the NESARA process. Source here, 1188. Roberts attempted to do this using out-of-date wire transfer codes obtained from the sacked Chinese and Japanese ambassadors, Zhu Wenzong and Ishiro Fujisaki. These ambassadors to the U.S. have been relieved of their duties during the week beginning the 21st of July 2008. They were arrested in Washington by security personnel specifically flown in from their own countries. Having failed to access the global prosperity funds from his offices in the U.S. Supreme Court, Roberts then went over to the Treasury and later on Monday, August 11, 2008, moved a sum of $3 trillion into a bank account in Dubai bearing his personal name. On the same day, Roberts supervised the transfers of other large sums of U.S. money from the U.S. Treasury to Dubai. These totaled in excess of $10 trillion and were credited to accounts held in the names of Dick Cheney, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, John McCain, and various senior U.S. Treasury officials. On Tuesday, the 12th of August, Tuesday, August 12th, Wednesday, August 13th, and Thursday, August 14th, 2008, John Glover Roberts again illegally blocked the delivery of 4,000 International Prosperity Fund trigger packages. The previous week, Roberts had been instructed by international law authorities to release the packages from the vaults of the Supreme Court by noon on Friday the 8th of 2008 at the latest. On Thursday, August 14, 2009, John Roberts, realizing that military and international law enforcement authorities were moving against him irresistibly, attempted to assemble a plea bargain in order to obtain immunity from prosecution. He provided the investigators with detailed incriminating papers and electronic files which implicated George Bush Jr., Bill Clinton, Dick Cheney, several senators and congressmen, and various senior personnel at the U.S. Justice Department and the U.S. Supreme Court. John Roberts was thanked for his information but was denied legal immunity. Roberts then threatened to burn all the prosperity packages in every program and thus prevent Brinks from delivering them. On the afternoon of Monday, 18th of August 2008, the military and international law enforcement authorities, learning of Roberts' incendiary threats, removed the 4,000 Prosperity Fund trigger packages from the vaults of the U.S. Supreme Court. In the week preceding the Beijing Olympics in August 2008, President George Bush Jr. illegally accessed some of the NESARA-related prosperity funds and stole a sum of $3 trillion from 40,000 individual accounts. He paid this money into a single new joint account in Dubai bearing his name and the name of the Dubai government. He then promised Dubai that a further $4 trillion would soon arrive in that account from similar sources. Dubai looked at their screen, saw the $3 trillion registered, and on that basis lent Bush a sum of $7.1 trillion. This money was handed over to China when Bush arrived in Beijing on Thursday, August the 7th, 2008. Basil the second Inslaw/Promise software detected the illegal $3 trillion wire transfer, and the international banking authorities repatriated the monies from Dubai into the original 40,000 accounts. Bush thus tricked Dubai into paying China $7.1 trillion to settle a U.S. debt. In related actions, when Bush left for the Olympics on board Air Force One from Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, he stopped off at the Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage, Alaska. While there, he attempted 3 times to change into unmarked planes and fly to Dubai. Security and law enforcement agencies prevented this, and he was compelled to continue his scheduled flight to Beijing aboard Air Force One. I wonder if he was afraid there might be an assassination attempt at the Olympics if he appeared there. On Friday, August the 8th, 2008, covert military agents acting for the Bush White House and for Zionist neocon interests fomented a long-prepared-for conflict in Georgia, Caucasia, Eastern Europe, which drew in the Russian army and resulted in a major local war. The purpose of this agitprop was international news diversion at a time when NESARA processes behind the scenes were becoming very tense. American and Israeli military advisors, U.S. soldiers and Marines, and a mercenary army from Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Ukraine conducted a joint training exercise called Immediate Response 2008 at the Vaziani Military Base, Georgia, from Tuesday, July 15th to Friday, August the 8th in 2008, when fighting broke out. The patsy in this U.S.-manufactured conflict was the controversial Georgian president, 41-year-old Mikhail Saakashvili. Saakashvili, Saakashvili intelligence establishment was brought to power in 2003 and 4 in a U.S. engineered coup run on the ground by U.S.-funded NGOs. At the exact moment when the world's major political leaders were gathering in China for the Olympic Games, Saakashvili and the Western mainstream media, including the BBC, immediately presented the Georgian conflict as bullying Russian aggression. There were energetic exchanges in the Beijing between Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin and U.S. President George Bush Jr. on the issue, with Putin reportedly shouting at Bush several times during the Olympic opening ceremony. Pictures of the shouting match were suppressed. Deeply embedded in the U.S.-Russian-Georgian conflict of August 2008 were the issues of elite corruption. An important oil pipeline runs through Georgia from Baku in Azerbaijan to Ceyhan in Turkey. This pipeline generates substantial transit royalties. When the original pipeline deal was set up during the U.S. presidency of Bill Clinton, a scam was incorporated into the paperwork whereby a major tranche of these transit royalties would be paid in perpetuity into the personal accounts of the Clinton-Bush cabal. The Georgian president, Mikhail Saakashvili, was the cabal's rent collector in this illegal venture and also a personal beneficiary. This is why Misha is so pro-Western. He is bought, bribed, and controlled by U.S.-Israeli corporate interests. By August 2008, the Clinton-Bush cabal was running seriously short of ready cash. Their hidden funds in the U.S., Europe, Grand Cayman, Paraguay, Dubai, etc. had been traced, confiscated, and added to the NESARA prosperity accounts, along with much larger Illuminati confiscations worldwide. Suddenly, the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline income assumed a survival significance. Their fear was that Russia would gain control of the pipeline and trash their illegal revenue flow. With the Illuminati on the run pre-NESARA, and with all major Illuminati agents and placement comprehensively excluded from Russia, China, and India, Georgia was the cabal's last hope for secure oil leverage in Asia. The Clinton-Bush clique was right to be worried. The Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin had demanded that his overdue payment of $87 billion, specified under the Reagan-Mitterrand protocols, must be paid and accessible in the bank by Monday, the 18th of August 2008, or he and the Glavnoji Razvedi Fatel, you can read that word for yourself, would quietly remove management and control of the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline from Georgia and the U.S. On Tuesday, August 19, 2008, an undisclosed third country offered to pay Vladimir Putin his $87 billion in order to get the U.S. off the hook and reduce international tension. Putin refused this offer point blank, saying that he would only accept the money from George Bush Jr. personally. On Thursday, June 26 of 2008, ex-President Bill Clinton was in London to meet British Prime Minister Gordon Brown at number 10 Downing Street. Clinton and Brown were working together to frustrate the NESARA international financial settlement procedures. Bill Clinton was also at the rough end of a criminal investigation in the UK. On Monday, the 2nd of June 2008, 300 armed British police seized 7,000 private vaults and lockboxes at 3 London locations in Mayfair, Hampstead, and Edgware. Each one of these vaults and lockups was identified as an individual crime scene. Several of them were understood to contain evidence directly linking Clinton with drug trafficking, money laundering, and underworld contract murders. I wonder how many of the Clinton sides were in those boxes. Bill Clinton was unable to leave the UK without signing legal papers and had been told that he would be arrested if he tried to escape. Also on Thursday, the 26th of June 2008, in America, the Crown Prince Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who is also the President of the United Arab Emirates, demanded a meeting with George Bush Jr. He had urgent matters to raise with the President concerning the USA's continuing blocking of the NESARA process and about the consequences of the American-sponsored sabotage of Internet links to the Arab Middle East. In January 2008, a decision had been taken by the U.S. and Israeli to destroy Arab Internet access. At the end of January and the beginning of February 2008, U.S.-Israeli Black Ops units moved in and cut 8 or more major undersea internet cables in the region, crashing global internet access for the Middle East banking centers in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and other 5 UAE Emirates. Israel was unaffected by the sabotage. This was deliberate severing of cables immediately denied Gulf Corporation Council members access to the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication hub in Brussels. This network carries 13 million encrypted database instructions a day relating to international transfers of monies between banks. The talks between George Bush Jr. and Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan took place at Camp David. They followed earlier ones between the two leaders in Zawaihan, UAE on Sunday, the 13th of January 2008. It was after this meeting that the Bush White House decided to cut the Arab internet cables. Camp David in Maryland is a major covert human cloning center. That's something we're going to have to investigate. 3 or 4 clones of President George Bush Jr. are kept in operation at any one time, and the ones not on duty are stored and renovated in sleeper cells at Camp David Clone Labs. This original George Bush Jr. it says the original George Bush Jr. was quietly murdered in January 2003 on the instructions of President George Bush Sr. and Dick Cheney. He had become inconvenient, unmanageable, and was an alcohol and cocaine addict. Now that is food for thought. That is seriously food for thought. The June 2008 talks at Camp David between George Bush Jr. and Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan also covered oil and stock market volatility. The Sheikh was furious with Bush about the Enron loophole and the profiteering manner in which American commodity traders associated with the Bush family energy interests and had been driving up the international oil price at a time when there was no shortage of oil in the supply lines. And he was angry about the capital destruction of the American financial sector, which was taking place because of the White House opposition to the NESARA and Basel II and III banking reforms. The Sheikh himself had many of his political and business associations in the UAE, and their sovereign wealth funds had taken enormous financial hits as American bank share prices collapsed in 2007 and 8. Citigroup was a case in point. In the space of less than 1 calendar year, Citigroup's market capitalization had fallen from $276 billion to $88 billion. And over the same period of time, the dollar itself had declined by 17%. Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and his friends had taken dollar positions in Citibank and many other U.S. financial institutions at the express invitation of the Americans, and they had lost their shirts. It was no mistake that the Sheikh's visit to Camp David came when it did. A week before, on the morning of Thursday, 19th June 2008, the directors of Citibank were prevented from entering their offices in New York in connection with a NESARA-related legal intervention involving the Crown Temple in London. This development sent waves of unease around Citibank Arab shareholders in the UAE. There was a real possibility that Citibank would lose a $6.2 trillion Crown Temple loan, which was held in a suspense account at its New York branch at 399 Park Avenue, and further that Citibank and its assets worldwide would be seized in perpetuity by the international financial authorities. On Monday, the 16th of June 2008, the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown unexpectedly flew to Northern Ireland to have an unscheduled last-minute NESARA-related meeting with American President George Bush Jr. This was thought to be strange. Brown had bid a formal farewell to Bush a few hours earlier that morning in London. This meeting took place at Belfast Airport. CIA NSC operative Stephen Hadley was present. Brown had gone to Ulster to open illegal covert personal bank accounts for himself and George Bush. Following a tip-off from investigative financial journalist Christopher Story and others, Pacific Rim Financial Security Units and British MI6 traced these accounts using NSLAW and Promise software. The search and find money movement engine is capable of tracking financial provinces back for 100 transactions and can accurately establish source of funds coordinates. Brown and Bush found their cover blown and their new accounts frozen by the International Basel II banking authorities. On Friday and Saturday, the 9th and 10th of November 2007 in Crawford, Texas, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel held talks with USA President George Bush Jr. and USA President George Bush Sr. The cover story was that the discussions focused on Iran and bilateral German-American relations. In fact, the high-energy topic of the moment was the unraveling Citibank scandal and Germany's entanglement in the banking fallout from that affair. A stolen sum totaling $4.5 trillion American dollars, had been laundered through Citibank and Morgan Stanley accounts in New York. The USA Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson was centrally involved in the administration on the theft. Already, the USA Provost Marshal had instructed the arrest of 3,000 bankers and others. Some of these were German and were well known to Merkel and Bush Sr. The diversion of the $4.5 trillion had become tangled up with banking release procedures to do with the much larger NESARA Global Prosperity Program shortly to be announced. The $4.5 trillion is referred to in G8 nation memos as the Wanta Plan funds. For both Bushes and Merkel, let me see, we're going to do an investigation in the Wanta Plan here in a little while. All right, for both Bushes and Merkel, personal and political survival was the issue. At that point, the corporate-controlled mainstream media had not run the story, but the essence of the scandal was all over the internet and beyond control. A month earlier, on Sunday, the 7th of October 2007, Gordon Brown, the British Prime Minister and First Lord of the Treasury, had publicly scrapped plans for a November 2000 general election in the UK. His cover story was that he had a public duty considered demands for him to go to the country early, but had decided it was better to give, let me see, hang on, somebody doesn't want this information out there. Let's see where we were. All right, Gordon Brown had decided it was better to give voters time to see his long-term vision in action. Critics said that Brown had left himself exposed to claims of weakness and indecision. The Prime Minister insisted that he had not been scared off by new opinion polls, giving the Conservative opposition party enough of a lead to wipe out his House of Commons majority. The general consensus among informed commentators was that Brown could easily have won a November 2007 election despite the transient post-conference opinion poll blip. The decision to bottle out was therefore most unusual for this shrewd political operator, but there was a compelling nexus of covert reasons for Gordon Brown's decisions which he was unable to acknowledge openly. As a doting private pupil of the American economist Alan Greenspan and a confidant of his for over a decade, the British Prime Minister knew well what is rumbling away volcanically beneath the surface of world affairs. The NESARA announcements are imminent. The world is on the cusp of a financial meltdown greater in scope than that experienced in the 1929 Wall Street crash. The Bush administration is about to be burned out of office before the end of its 4-year term, and Queen Elizabeth II of England has been involved in behind-the-scenes financial maneuvers with her personal gold and with issues to do with the late Diana Spencer, Princess of Wales, which, when fully disclosed and investigated, could spell the end of the monarchy in the United Kingdom. Gordon Brown was alert to the fact that these 4 eventualities could all erupt very suddenly and at the same time. He did not want the resulting geopolitical scandals to disrupt his British general election campaign. When the U.S. Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson met in London with the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Alistair Darling, on Monday, 17 September 2007, it was during the Northern Rock Bank run in Europe. The public pronouncements of both politicians around that meeting addressed this issue, but privately the urgent matter under discussion was the imminent and unavoidable NESARA announcements. And back in July 2007, as the Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, completed talks with President Bush at Camp David, Maryland, British military withdrawal from Iraq was not the most sensitive topic. It was the prospect of the NESARA announcements, which was more difficult for both men, and NESARA was the late-night visitor again at the APEC meeting in Sydney at the beginning of September 2007. Who was in Sydney? Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, China, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Peru, Philippines, Russia, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Taipei, Thailand, USA, and Vietnam. These 21 economies account for more than a third of the world's population, about 60% of global GDP, and 47% of world trade volume. At the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, there were 2 agendas for the 21 leaders, the public agenda and the private agenda. The public agenda was about climate change. The Doha Round and media filtered right on were doing a good job against the terrorist regional issues. The private agenda did not exist. Don't you worry your pretty little head about the private agenda. The private agenda was NESARA and China versus America for ownership of the planet. NESARA is the Covert National Economic Security and Reformation Act. Notice that the S is for security, not S for stability. S for stability is a bait-and-switch mirror fraud, so is GESARA. Following initiatives taken by the U.S. Supreme Court in the 1990s, NESARA was passed into law by Congress in March of 2000. It was one of the last official documents which ex-President Bill Clinton signed before leaving office. He added his signature on the 10th of October 2000, just before George W. Bush took office on the 20th of January 2001. He agreed to step down after a 6-month period as president to allow for the implementation of the NESARA program, and had signed papers to that effect. But upon completing his oath of office, George Bush immediately reneged on the agreement and instructed the FBI and CIA to construct a scheme to stop the NESARA. They did this. 9/11 was part of that scheme. The Iraq War was another. The NESARA statute had been kept under wraps since 2000, but has been periodically updated since. Recent actions by the U.S. administration have energized the move for its disclosure. NESARA restores constitutional law at the moment it is announced. Corporate USA administration officials are immediately removed, pieces announced in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the military are withdrawn. All credit card and mortgage debt is canceled as a remedy for U.S. banking fraud. Similar moves are implemented in more than 100 other countries worldwide. Following NESARA announcement, the Federal Reserve Board will be abolished. A new U.S. Treasury Bank will click into place, and a new American gold-backed currency, possibly called USN, U.S. Treasury Note, will be introduced. The U.S. dollar will be abolished. It is also likely that the missing 13th Amendment of the original Constitution of the United States of America will be reinstated. That's another topic we will have to investigate. In October and November 2007, new ATM machines were installed all over the USA. The ATMs were automated teller machines, hole-in-the-wall cash dispensers. The new ATMs have replaced the older machines to accommodate the new global banking system, which is being rolled out as part of the NESARA World Prosperity Programs. Bank of America will shortly become the new Treasury Bank of the United States and will replace the Federal Reserve Board. The offices and buildings of the Federal Reserve Board will become branches of the USA Treasury. Most non-senior Federal Reserve Board personnel who do not oppose the changes will be absorbed into the new systems. Bank of America now has the clearance and the capacity to operate the new high-security green money wiring system. Gold is going to be important. There is more gold in store in covert vaults than it officially stated, and there is also a lot more gold available beyond these covert vaults than even the dark side money men of the Illuminati know. Large deposits of gems and precious metals, not just silver, gold, palladium, and platinum, but some others as yet unknown to modern science, have been accumulated and securely stored since the 14th century. Most of the Inca, Aztec, and Mayan gold of antiquity is extant and secure, and there is much gold in store from earlier civilizations not known to orthodox human history. The Gobi, Tibet, Persia, and North Africa, let me see, I've done lost my place, among others, have networks of subterranean vaults packed with treasures of this kind. These deposits are spiritually protected by the higher evolution. Higher evolution has also privileged information about the location of substantial undiscovered gold seams and hundreds of terrestrial locations beyond the reach or knowledge of the mining industry. They also have technology to the extent this gold without environmental damage. In addition, there are benign extraterrestrial sources of gold ready and waiting to be brought on stream post-NESARA. Some of these are said to be very large indeed, particularly those of the Venusian origin. At least 2 members of the G8 nations are in difficulties here. They have not got the deliverable gold they need to survive the coming changes. Much of the gold held at the American Fort Knox Bullion Depository in Kentucky is not gold at all. It consists of facsimile lead bars painted a gold color for presentation purposes. This is becoming noticeable as the gold paint fades. Where the original gold went and who took it is shortly to be made public by a former insider. Much of the USA's gold reserves are listed as being mint-held gold in deep storage. Dealers have always assumed that this means finished gold bars stored in deep underground vaults beneath places such as Fort Knox, Denver, and West Point. The indications are emerging, however, that the term deep storage gold is a euphemism for yet to be mined gold. It doesn't exist in deliverable form. It is merely a paperwork forecast about future gold mining potentials. In the United Kingdom, there are problems too. Not all the gold held by the Bank of England is fit for delivery. The gold stored in the BOE vaults began to be accumulated in the early 19th century. It takes the form of gold bars, ingots, and coins. Current methods of assessing quality have indicated flaws in the purity. Many of the gold bars contain cracks and fissures, and the coins contain appreciable quantities of base metals. And much of the British gold lacks up-to-date assay certificates. With gold being central to the NESARA reforms, these problems are not inconsiderable. There are some curious stories told about the various provenances of the gold held in the St. Germain World Trust. One involves George Bush Sr. and V.K. Durham. V.K. Durham was the wife of CIA operative Russell Herman, a close intelligence community colleague of George Bush Sr. in the 1980s. She found an 1875 Peruvian gold certificate in an old Bible she had purchased. The certificate had a face value of $1,000 plus accrued interest. It is now worth trillions of dollars. George Bush Sr. learned of the gold certificate bond through Russell Herman, who verified its validity and was determined to steal it. NESARA is an uncomfortable prospect for President George Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney. Both will be removed from office with immediate effect. They will be replaced with constitutionally acceptable NESARA President and Vice President designates, thought to be Congressman Dennis Kucinich, Democrat, Ohio, and Congressman Ron Paul, Republican, Texas. 6 months after the NESARA announcement is made, new U.S. federal elections will be held. NESARA will happen. All the monies, all the systems, all the prosperity programs, and all the new banks are in position worldwide. But first the dead wood has to be cleared out. Ken Lay, Jeff Skilling, David Duncan, Ari Fleischer, Scott McClellan, Joe Albaugh, James Cuckert, Jeff Cannon, and it lists all these. Let's see if we recognize any of these names. Down here at the bottom it says George Bush Sr., Henry Kissinger, Nancy Pelosi, and the Clintons will go soon. And then it will be the last march of the clones. George Bush Jr., Dick Cheney will follow them down the road, and the West Wing laboratories will be cleared of equivocal DNA for the last time. With regard to the NESARA American banking changes outlined above, an insider Casper report dated August 26th of 2007 here suggested that the main public announcement had been scheduled for Tuesday, the 18th of September in 2000. It did not happen. Other smaller preparatory NESARA statements to do with conceptual, illegal, and constitutional matters were due to emerge in the days before the financial announcement of the 18th September 2007. These statements were not made. It was said that on the 18th of September the Fed was to meet for the last time to say goodbye to Ben Bernanke. Whether or not that happened is not clear, but on the 18th of 2007, the Fed, following the Northern Rock bank run in Europe, took the most unusual decision to cut American interest rates by 0.5 percentage point and thus pump up the American stock market for a few more weeks. The Federal Reserve Board has been a credit system of fiat money. As such, it has all the Federal Reserve Board has been a credit system of fiat money. As such, it has always been unfit for purpose. Very soon now, the swindle will end, and the new gold standard system, as required by the American Constitution, will finally come online. More about the carefully planned removal of the Federal Reserve Board is detailed here and here, and those links no longer work. I think we're going to have to do a part 3 on this as well. So, I'm going to end it here. Look for part 3 in a couple of days. I will post the link if you want to read it yourself. So again, these came from WeThePeople1787.com, and we will continue where we left off in part 3.